guys? Welcome back. Inside Chat. That's so exciting today. So today's guest is Robert Ingram, and he is the founder, boss man at McDojoLife. Now, I'm sure you've heard of McDojoLife. It is like the be all and end all of viral videos for martial arts. And rather than me kind of explain it, I'm gonna get Robert now to tell us a little bit more about it. How are you, Rob? You okay?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm just kind of getting the day going. So this will be basically my breakfast, and then I got a whole bunch of content to film today, so that'll be fun. But life is good.
So, where to begin? Obviously, most people in the martial arts world are going to know about McDojoLife, but let's imagine for a second that some listener or some viewer has no clue what I'm on about. What is McDojoLife?
So the brand McDojoLife calls out fakes, frauds, phonies, pedophiles, and con men in the martial arts industry. And so the ultimate goal is to try to keep martial arts more legitimate by shining a light on people who are fraudulent or taking advantage of students or the community.
So, like I said, it's a lot of people around the world are going to know about McDojoLife. When did it start for you? When did you begin with it?
Well, at the time, I had already been in martial arts for a really long time. I think it's maybe 13 years by that time or something around there. But I was coaching jiu-jitsu. I was a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, and I was working the front desk, and I was a striking coach for them. I ran their kids program. I did a lot for that particular company. But my boss one day had called in sick, and he said, "Hey, man, I'm not able to make it in today." And I knew he was really sick because he never called in. So I was like, "Yeah, I get it." So he asked me if I'd coach a class. And I was like, yeah, of course I'll coach the class. So I teach the class, a couple techniques, and then we spar. Everyone goes to leave. Well, because it was a noon class, a lot of those guys didn't have really any obligations to go to. They either worked for themselves or they didn't have that day to work or whatever. So they were free. So we stood around. We were all shooting the shit, chit chatting, and then everyone left except for one guy, and it was like his second class ever. Like he had taken his intro class and this class, and then I guess during those conversations, the term McDojo had come up, and he was not aware of what that was. So he goes, "Hey man, I'm a little embarrassed, but you guys were talking about McDojos." He goes, "What is that?" And then I explained to him what has now kind of become the 5 rules of McDojoLife, and I explained to him what that was, and he said, "Well, how come no one does anything about that?" And then we left. So that night, I was just thinking about that. I was like, why doesn't anybody do anything about that? And so I did research, and I saw there was like forums, like there was like Bullshido at the time. There was like that was kind of it, I guess. At the time, that's all I could think of. And then I started to make Dojo Life the next day. And then originally it was like long form essays on Facebook. So I didn't do it like I do now. I found that what I do now is more impactful than what I was doing before. But I was doing these long form essays about letting everybody know, like, oh, look, this particular school, these are all the reasons that there's something wrong. But no one was reading them and no one cared. And then one day I posted some random video, and then I moved on with my day. And when I came back, the random video had way more likes and shares, and I had a couple more followers than I did before when I was doing all this work and research. So then I started straying away from the long form stuff, and now basically I just post a clip, then I post like maybe 1 or 2 words describing what it is, and then people in the comment sections, they start to dig in a little deeper, and they start asking questions and talking to each other, which is the goal, is to create a community environment where we're all kind of rallying around keeping martial arts legitimate. um, and then so I started doing YouTube breakdowns, and those start doing really well, and so it just kind of grew from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think like anything that goes viral, it kind of touches a nerve, doesn't it? You kind of you've put your finger on the pulse of obviously a lot of feeling across the world in the community, and you talked about it then. And I remember you telling me in a message once about these 5 rules, and I was like, yeah, I'm on board with that. So again, what are these 5 rules in for anyone listening or watching?
Well, they're pretty simple. So the martial arts is really petty. Everybody in the martial arts industry hates everybody else, and sometimes even within their own organizations or systems, they're like, "Yeah, that's Muay Thai, but it's not like my Muay Thai," or it's like, "Yeah, that's Jiu-Jitsu, but I mean, come on, that's not real Jiu-Jitsu." It's like, come on, get out of here. That's basically just ego stroking at that point. Make yourself feel better by putting the other guy down, and I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to bully people. That wasn't the point, and it still isn't the point, and never will be the point. But the 5 rules are really simple, and most of these, I think almost everyone can agree with. I haven't really had anybody disagree, but maybe somebody will be out there to help me and disagree, and I can learn more. But one, pedophiles. There should be no pedophiles in the martial arts industry, and yet it is swarmed and rampant with pedophilia. I mean, there's a website. It's like thetruthAboutMartialArts.weebly.com. And this website does nothing but keep track of everyone who's ever been arrested in the United States for pedophilia. And it's for martial arts anyway. So it's like just a list upon name of how many there are. And then if you just type in martial arts molestation into Google, somebody I'm sure within this last week either got arrested or convicted for doing it in the martial arts industry. So pedophilia is a huge problem in the industry, mostly because there's no there's no like governing body. And so because there's no governing body, literally anyone can just open up a martial arts studio. And even there are people who are very famous. Like there's a guy named David Arnbeck. David Arnbeck molested a 15-year-old girl in his home, in his house. And then he took a plea deal, but the plea deal that he took allowed him not to be on a sex offender registry. So he still owns 3 martial arts studios today, and he's still teaching today. So he has access to children still, and that's scary to me. But yeah, so pedophilia is rule number 1. Rule number 2, don't lie about your belt rank or your fight record. Like, look, if you are a 1-stripe white belt teaching classes out of your garage, I don't care. I don't care. If the people who come to sign up for you understand that, and they know that you don't know much, but you know more than them, then they're getting what they paid for. There's no lie there. But the moment you lie about your belt rank and fight record, what that does, first, it devalues everyone else's that worked hard for it. And that's not fair. Through blood, sweat, tears, time, sacrifice, those things are earned. And when somebody comes along and just says, I'm a 37th degree black belt in Rob Kwon-Do, well, you're full of shit, one, but also if you're willing to lie about those things, you'll probably lie about anything else. And so that's where the start of it being dangerous comes in. Then it's cult-like behavior and unsafe training practices. So unsafe training practices are things like, you have the old school master who's got the stick, and if you don't do something right, he cracks you over the head 5 times. Dude, that doesn't help anybody. All that does is make you a victim forever. It makes you think that behavior is okay. And so when you probably should be standing up for yourself and protecting yourself, you might not, because you're ingrained that behavior is okay. And you shouldn't be abused. It's just ridiculous. Or having your students line up while you punch them in the head repeatedly. Well, that doesn't help them. That doesn't do anything for them. That's not useful. All it does is going to make it more likely for them to be knocked out in the long run and create long-term damage that they didn't necessarily need. Because at least in sparring, I have the opportunity to move out of the way or block or something or hit you back to make you not want to hit me. So it's much different. But cult-like behavior you can see in like I'll use jiu-jitsu, because jiu-jitsu is one of those things that people think is infallible. Like there's nothing wrong with jiu-jitsu. There's a term in jiu-jitsu called the crianche. And the crianche is a traitor. And it's typically used, unfortunately, way too often. And it's used by instructors who are manipulating their students to think that the instructor has any right whatsoever to tell the student what to do outside of the classroom. If I'm paying you for a service, my loyalty to you, past me getting to know you better and making my own decisions to be loyal, ends at the door. When I leave, you don't get to tell me what to do with my life. You don't get to tell me where to go, who to hang out with, what to do, because that's a cult. That's what cults do. And want to control every aspect of your life. And so that's a very dangerous term, because what that does is it makes it so that way people feel obligated to stay with you, not stay with you because they want to. And also, if you're out there and you have a coach that tells you shouldn't train with somebody else, fuck your coach, go do what you want to do. You should leave that atmosphere immediately. That is toxic, super toxic. And you might not notice it, but that is a very controlling atmosphere and dangerous to you. Because if they start controlling little things, they'll control bigger things. And if you allow them to control that, just imagine where your money's going. Your money's going to a person who's telling you what to do with your life. No, dog. Go do the things that make you happy. But anyway, so that's rule number 3. Rule number 4 is shady business practices. So shady business practices are quite simply, usually you'll see this a little bit more with karate and taekwondo, which is why they get a lot of heat. But what'll happen is you sign up, you get the price, and then all of a sudden these extra fees start appearing out of nowhere. That's shady. Those should be presented to you right off the bat. And if you were aware that they were there, that's different. But if all of a sudden they appear out of nowhere, that's shady. When I first started in martial arts, we had a guy locally who would strong arm people if they were late for payment. So he would go to their house, knock on their door if they were late for payments, and he would threaten them physically if they did not pay him. So that's a little bit of a shady business practice. And there are plenty of other examples. And then finally, it would be no touch knockouts or mislabeling technique. So no touch knockouts, right? We all look at that and we go, that's ridiculous. Believe it or not, as much as people don't want to believe it, there are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people all around the world who have been convinced that this is a real thing by charismatic cult leaders. So yeah, that's not safe. Obviously, that type of mentality, thinking you have supernatural abilities when you don't, is extremely dangerous because that's the tip of the iceberg to what they're taught. And if that doesn't work, then I'm sure the other half of the horse shit they're taught doesn't work either. And they're going to try that in their moment of weakness and duress, and it's not going to work, and they're going to get hurt. And that's dangerous. But the mislabeling technique thing that goes along with that is something as simple as going to a cardio kickboxing class and them telling you that's self-defense. It's not. It's not. Will it help you lose weight? Sure. Will you learn good jabs and crosses and be a little better than you were before about throwing a punch? Sure. But that wasn't the goal. The goal was to lose weight and get in shape. And so by calling that self-defense when it's clearly not, when no one's ever hitting you back, when no one's ever grabbing you, when no one's ever kicking you, that's not self-defense. That's you hitting a bag. And there's nothing wrong with that. Just don't call that self-defense because it's not. And so there's a lot of mislabeling in the martial arts industry. And that's a fine line of danger because people don't think there's anything wrong with it sometimes. You know, it's like, oh, they're just losing weight. They're having a good time. No, what they're doing is they're ingraining an ideal in their head that, okay, every time I hit this bag, this is making me better at self-defense. I can protect myself. What that does is it stops them from wanting to actually go learn self-defense because why do I need to go buy self-defense when I got self-defense at home? Like, it doesn't work that way. You know, you have to actually go train for the thing that you're about to be working on or be good at. And self-defense, you have to train on people grabbing you. You have to train on people trying to hit you. You have to be able to hit people back, which is a hard thing for a lot of people to do when they first start. Like when a lot of people first start boxing, they don't really want to hit the other person because they're in their head, they don't want to hurt someone. But unfortunately, that's not the name of the game. You kind of got to do it. So those are the 5 rules, and I think that those are important no matter what art you do. It doesn't matter what art you do, which is another thing that was important to me, is that I wasn't singling out any martial art. I'm just trying to provide a baseline of things that I think that we can all follow.
No, I mean, like I said, I remember when you messaged me this because obviously it's kind of funny. We're almost very alike in some respects. I made it my thing to, okay, when I was younger, we didn't have the internet, and when I was traveling, I was finding it difficult to find good martial arts. You'd have to go, see what it was like, make your own judgment, and then leave and go on. And that's what it was like when I was younger and I was scraping about for magazines and books. And this is pre-internet, obviously. And I always thought, wouldn't it be cool to go out to all these places and see how these great guys that you read about are, you know, so I made it the thing for me that I was going to do my research. And again, across all martial arts, it wasn't any in particular. I like all martial arts. But I always figured on who are the best, who can I research who are the best, and if they weren't the best, then I wasn't going to go there. Whereas for you, you kind of took that taken of, oh, okay, I'm going to focus on these guys who are ripping people off, who are a problem for the community, and I'm going to expose these issues and educate, you know, and that's what it is. Because at first, until you told me those 5 rules, I was a bit, where's the line? You know, because like you said right at the start then, you didn't want to be a bully. You didn't want to pick on a particular martial art. And again, that's kind of where we're in agreement there. I don't think that's what anyone should be doing. But when you told me those rules and you just very brilliantly explained just then, I don't think that, like you just said, it can't be anything that anyone would find disagreement with, wouldn't get on board with. I mean, I'm always shocked, to be honest, when you post these clips, like thinking, God, where does he find all these clips? And unfortunately, it's because they're everywhere, aren't they? I'm guessing that's what you're going to say. If I said to you, where do you find all these clips? What would you say to that?
It's not hard. I can throw a stick and find one. I think that there's a couple things in the martial arts industry that are mindsets that are kind of ingrained and passed down. And really, some of those mindsets are a lot more toxic than we want them to be. And one of those is, well, I'm just going to focus on me and my students and make them better. And a lot of people think that's a great mindset, and it is to a point. But let's look at it a little bit differently. All right, let's reframe that thought process. So let's say martial arts is an office building, right? The building is named martial arts. And inside that office building, you have all these different floors. And on each floor, there's a different martial art. You have karate and taekwondo and judo and jiu-jitsu. And hell, even aikido's in there. They got a small office, but we still let them in there. And we got all these different martial arts, right? But they're martial arts. Legitimate. They have lineages. They have techniques. They have curriculum. They are true martial arts. And every morning we get up as instructors and we go in and we check in at the front desk. And then we go up to our floor to teach our classes, and then we leave for the day. And every morning we look over to the left and we see a guy, a random dude out of nowhere, trying to set the building on fire. But we don't talk to him. We just ignore him because our focus is going to be on our students and making our students better. Well, eventually what's going to happen is that asshole is going to set the building on fire, and all of you were still in it. And you had every opportunity every day to stop that person and do something about it, but you turned a blind eye and did absolutely nothing about it. To me, it is just as much those people's faults as it is the guy trying to set the building on fire. And so when I look at martial arts, I look at us as a community that sometimes, not always, sometimes likes to hide behind all those tenets or codes of honor rather than actually trying to apply them. Because it's so much easier to hide behind them than to actually pay them any attention. Where's the honor in seeing somebody ruin the martial arts industry and do nothing about it? Where's the integrity when you see these people teaching people bullshit and allowing that to continue? You know, where is it? It doesn't exist. But we think, oh, well, you know what? I'm just going to focus on my students and making them better, and I'm going to work on that. And that's, you know what? That is something that's very important. But we shouldn't ignore bad people doing bad things. Because that makes you worse than them, in my opinion. That means you had the ability to do something and chose not to. And that should make you feel like shit if anybody is out there and you're teaching these classes and then all of a sudden you go, well, you know, I focus on my students. But next thing you know, the guy that you were quite aware is doing shady things, molests 5 kids. You know, and you could have said something, you could have done something, you could have brought attention to it. But you know what? You're focusing on your guys. Make them better. Come on now. That's, to me, that's a terrible mindset about a community. And that's where the selfishness and ego comes in the martial arts. I'm going to focus on me and my students. Well, that's the most egotistical statement I've ever heard in my life. You know, what about the community? What about people who don't know any better? What are we putting out as a community to educate the people who haven't joined martial arts yet that want to? To me, I haven't really seen much curriculum about it. I haven't seen much frame of reference for people who've never done martial arts before. They might watch UFC, they might watch karate, they might watch taekwondo, but they don't know anything about what to look for, what to ask for, what a lineage is, what belts mean, what the techniques are, what's realistic, what's not, and that kind of stuff should be out there. We should be presenting these things so that way more people would join instead of just going, you know what, I'm gonna focus on me and mine. Like, come on, that to me that's toxic.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I think the difficulty is though, isn't it, is because there's so many different martial arts styles. It's been a culture thing where, oh, I don't really teach that, so I can't really comment on it in some respects. And also different countries like Britain, for example, you know, we're notorious for avoiding confrontation and not kind of sticking our nose into other people's business. So it's kind of, I agree with exactly what you're saying. It's just, it's different, isn't it? In practice, a lot of people will avoid calling others out if they feel like they're not sure or if it's from a different martial art style. And again, like you just said, it's about education. Those of us who are experiencing martial arts to a certain level can identify that ourselves quite clearly. But we forget, you know, for the community who are the majority who don't have that kind of knowledge to understand the dangers or the discrepancies as you've just put on there. It is a tough one, and I like I said, I agree with what you're saying. I think the problem is like you mentioned earlier on, is when martial arts aren't regulated. There's no governing body. It's not, and again, it boils down to this different martial arts, and they don't put them under any umbrella. like obviously in the UK, I'm going to go off UK. In the UK, we have those martial arts which are Olympic sports. We have GB Taekwondo, we have ABA boxing. But for all the other martial arts, and like I said, someone can come up with their own martial art and open up a school tomorrow. I can call Stuart Martial Arts and teach, okay, you're Stuart Third Dan or whatever. And it's crazy that people can do that. I mean, that's always been the thing for me, that I always find that crazy. And when I've come across these people, I'm guilty of kind of, like you've just mentioned there, in the past, of just kind of staying away from them, not doing anything with them. But in reality, where do you go with that? Because you can't go to the police, can you? Who do you report them to?
Well, sometimes you can. Sometimes you can. Like the majority of my rules are illegal, like molesting children.
Oh
Like.
yeah, no,
But
I think for those ones, I'm just talking about
well,
when those borderline
here's
ones,
one
aren't
thing.
they?
Here's one thing, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's something that's been coming up a lot recently because we've been doing this documentary, and one thing that's come up a lot is we asked a lot of professionals from all different types of martial arts, who were experts in their field, if they could change, what would be one thing they'd change in the martial arts industry, right? And I brought this up to every one of them, and they all thought it was a good idea, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. But from what I've seen, it seems like we can fix a good chunk of problems, not all the problems, but a good little bit of the problems with two things. And they would be so easy to implement. One, require every martial arts studio ever to be CPR certified. Super easy. Doesn't take very much money. It's very reasonable. Most of the time, your CPR certification lasts more than a year, and then you re-up, and you can usually re-up online. It's not difficult. Obviously, we're in the business of being physical, and so there's a chance that somebody could have some type of injury, and we should be prepared for that as instructors. I think that across the board should be standard. The other thing that I think should be standard is we should require everyone from the top all the way to the bottom to be locally and federally background checked. And now in the United States, obviously we have federally. I don't know what it is in Britain or in Europe, but the idea is that you're background checked. So it should be available for people to know who they're about to spend their time, money, and effort in, and who they're leaving their children with. Now, obviously, martial arts has done great things for a lot of people who had bad lives, who had made mistakes, and reformed themselves and are now doing great. Do I think that they should be ostracized? No. But what this will do is this will automatically shine a light on anybody who's had multiple cases of conviction for sexual misconduct. And I think that that's where things get a little crazy. Because what happens is usually people like child molesters, for instance, eventually there'll be a track record. And if we have those things as a requirement, then what will happen is it'll shy them away from even wanting to join or start. Because if I, as a new student, know, hey, well, you have a local federal background check. Do you mind if I take a look at it? And it's posted. What do you have to hide? What is there to hide? Nothing. If you're clean, slap that fucker up on the board. Let people know. Look, my background check's clear. you know, will that apply to everyone? No. Obviously, there'll be people who had some bad experiences in their life, and it might not be clear. But at least you can say, look, I haven't molested anybody. I think that would help a lot of things, a lot of problems. Because if we're about this honor and integrity, then where is it? Background check your people. Every one of them. If they're a behind the desk guy, he gets a background check, or she. If they're a coach, background check. Every one of them. And if they don't pass, they don't get a job. They can go get a job somewhere else. Plenty of people will hire them. Maybe just not a job in this industry.
I agree completely. And I mean, that there are two things from a UK equivalent that I do myself with mine. That's been standard for me since year dot. So like nowadays it's changed a little bit. We call it CRB, which is the criminal background check in the UK, and the CPR is obviously the first aid and the medical side of it. But yeah, that's what we do here. But you're right, it's in the UK, the legal things for what we do are simply, and even then they don't check, would be public liability insurance, which is if someone trips over on your premises, you've got insurance to claim it. But other than that, you're not legally required to have the CRB. You're not legally required to have the first aid. These are just recommended practices. Like I said, I agree completely. And actually it brings me round to the documentary that you're creating, which is another thing that I wanted to ask you about. Now, that's a big documentary subject, isn't it? You know, and what? So how's that going? So talk to me a bit about what you're doing with the documentary.
Well, so I kind of lost you there for a second. Are you still with me?
Yeah, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. It was just your video kind of conked out on me there. So, um, but yeah, so the documentary is pretty simple. It's the idea is to talk about some of these pitfalls in the martial arts industry. We're not trying to paint martial arts in a bad light whatsoever, but we're just trying to make people aware that there are charlatans and frauds out there who are taking advantage of people, and we're trying to understand it. So we talk to psychologists, we talk to doctors, we've talked to martial arts experts, we've talked to martial arts con men, a lot of them. um, it's actually amazing how many of them agreed to be on film. I was a little blown away. um, yeah, we talked to some of the most famous martial arts con men on the planet. One of which is James Heydrich. Are you aware of who James Heydrich is?
The name doesn't ring a bell, no.
So James Heydrich was at one time considered the world's greatest psychic. That was actually his title. People thought he really was a psychic. He was that good of a con man that he convinced everyone he could do some astonishing feats. It was all magic. Well, eventually he got called out by James Randi, rest in peace. And James Randi is well known for being the guy who calls out frauds. And he dedicated his entire life to calling out frauds. I mean, he died with that check in his pocket. You know, if anybody could prove that they had psychic abilities, he'd pay him a check that he carried around his pocket. I think it was like $1 million challenge or something like that. You know, but he actually called out James Heydrich live on TV. James Heydrich said that he can move pages of a book with his mind, with his psychic ability. Well, Randy, being a magician, quite quickly figured out what he was doing, which is just blowing air out of his mouth to move the page. He had just developed this technique to where you couldn't really see his mouth move. And so Randy put some packaging peanuts around the book and he said, now do it. And Heydrich couldn't do it because it would have been obvious that if he would have blown any air, these peanuts would have moved. And so he got stumped. Well, not too long after that, Heydrich winds up getting arrested for molesting 5 children. And then he winds up getting a plea deal. He's in a mental state hospital right now. And so we couldn't have thought of anyone better to bring in to discuss and help us, honestly, understand how a con man functions. And so we brought him in not to like roast him in any way because he's been shit on enough. Like he's paying his dues. And I'm not saying what he has done is right, but what I am saying is kudos to him for taking the time because he was really skeptical about interviewing with us. But we used him as a subject matter expert to help us understand how other con men con people. And he gave us like basically like the seminar. He taught us like all the little tricks. He told us about little things that people do to con people, how they do it, how easy it is. When we talked to psychologists talk to us about how cults work and operate. We talked to a religious leader. There's a guy named Bishop Barron, who is like probably the second most famous Catholic on the planet. Well, his number 2 guy, we talked to him about the differences and similarities between martial arts and religion, which is what a lot of these guys do, is they try to like weave and use the religious connotation to control people and manipulate them. So we talked to him. We talked to Stephen Thompson. We talked to David LeDuc. We talked to, we're going to talk to Angie Hill. Who else? Karate by Jesse Enkamp. We talked to Real World Tactical, 2 Navy SEALs. We talked to as many subject matter experts as we could on their particular martial arts for their opinion, Andre Galvo, about what is and what is not legitimate and what will and what won't work. And then we did 2 experiments. One experiment, which we already did, which we had a guy come in and teach us a pressure point, no touch knockout seminar, which was kind of interesting. So what we did was we took 10 people, 10 individuals, and I told them for the first hour, all of these people trained, by the way, I told them for the first hour, just go with it. Don't try to rock the boat. If something doesn't work, just kind of pretend it does. If you have questions, hold the questions for the first hour. Let's just see where it goes, right? Let's give it the benefit of the doubt and give it a chance. All these people train martial arts. We had a Krav Maga person there, a capoeira person there, a karate person there, a wrestler, MMA, jiu-jitsu. All these different styles were represented there. And he thought none of these people really trained. And so he starts teaching the seminar. But I told them after the hour, I want you guys to actually be vocal. Just be yourself. I didn't tell anybody to be confrontational. I didn't tell anybody to do anything. All I said was just be you and say what you would normally say. And man, after that hour, that dude was ripped apart. Man, one of my favorites, and I'll just talk about it right now. One of my favorite parts of the seminar was at the end, he kept getting so many questions that he stopped what he was teaching and he said, all right, guys, well, we're just going to open up the final 30 minutes to Q&A. And so good sport on him. He just kind of went with it. Someone asked in the audience, well, what do you do about a knife? And he got really excited. Oh, knife. He goes over to his bag and he pulls out his knife, and a rubber knife, training knife, and he comes back and he hands it to the only person in the room who did not train, because we had 10 people who were supposed to show up that did train. Well, one didn't. So we replaced him with one of our camera dudes who had never trained a day in his life. And so he hands the knife to that guy. And so he goes, well, what kind of attack are we talking about here? And he goes, oh, like the upward shank, the person in the audience says. And so he goes, okay, well, let's work on that. And so he takes his hands like this in a downward motion and tries to hit the knife like this, right? And so our cameraman stabs this dude like 15 times. It's the funniest shit I'd ever seen in my life. And so he's trying to show this technique as he's getting stabbed, and it's not working, and he's getting stabbed. So this is past the hour, so people stop pretending they didn't know anything. Well, one of the guys in the audience was like, wouldn't this work better? And he just does a standard 2-on-1 grip on the guy's arm. And he doesn't get stabbed. And the guy, the teacher, the instructor goes, no, definitely, that's not a good idea. Because he goes, where do you go next? He's, now you're stuck. Like, bitch, I'm not getting stabbed. That's the important part. We'll figure the rest out as we go. Step 1, stop getting stabbed. Step 2, we'll figure it out. But anyway, so he goes, no, that's not going to work. What I would do, the reason I'm not grabbing him is because I want to get close. And so he does. He hits the guy's arm, he runs up, and he grabs him and hugs him. He doesn't isolate the arm or control the knife arm at all. So our camera guy has this knife that's free and loose behind this guy's back. And the guy's talking and addressing the audience. Well, while he's doing that, our cameraman is doing this behind his back. And he's not touching him, so he doesn't know this is happening. But he would be getting stabbed up, right? So someone in the audience goes, well, what happens when he stabs you in the back? Like, that they can clearly see. And he goes, well, you're getting stabbed in the back, so you don't see the blood, so it's not that bad. That was his actual answer. This guy is paid to teach people self-defense. And he comes out with bullshit, just nonsense, that advice right there would quite literally get someone killed. Because that's the whole experiment, is would he give good advice or not? And it was clear he was just pulling stuff out his ass. It was regurgitated, and this guy is a ranked instructor in that particular art. This is his trade. And so what kills me is when I see stuff like this, you know, everybody always goes online, well, you never did it, so you don't know. Like, bitch, yes, I did. Like, that's what I do for a living. I go, I look, I experiment, and then I come back and try to provide people with good answers. You know, we had one guy, when I took the seminar for the documentary, another seminar we did, he said, literally, we're there, he's talking to us about chi and how to make chi happen. And he mentioned levels, and I was like, oh, levels, that's cool. Well, how many levels do you have? And he was like, oh, we have 10 levels. And so I know that the head of I researched them thoroughly before I went. So I already know the answers to most of these things, but it's good to get on camera. So I said, well, levels, that's awesome, because I actually didn't know that. I go, well, who's level 10, since you have 10 levels? Who's like the level 10 guy? Now, to my knowledge, it was a guy named Adam Misner, who was supposed to be the head of the organization. Who is the head of the organization? And he goes, oh, we don't have a level 10. I go, well, that's strange. I go, well, what is Adam Misner? He goes, oh, well, Adam's a level 7. I go, oh, level 7. Well, why isn't there like a 8, 9, and 10? Why does it stop at 7? He goes, oh, well, humans can't go past level 7. Like, humans? What the fuck are you talking about? Like, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. And so, like, but this is from these instructors, and people wonder why, like, this is dangerous. This is a cult. That is the epitome of what a cult would say. Some type of divinity or outside being. Like, come on. And people wonder why I go after this stuff daily. It's dangerous. Like, that's a step away from asking people to drink Kool-Aid. You know? Like, get out of here. I don't know. That's but yeah, so we're working on the documentary and we're putting it together. We're trying to make it, I guess, humorous, but as well as educational. Kind of like the feel of the page. without making fun of anybody. We just really want to make sure that people are aware. We interviewed Ashita Kim, probably one of the most famous frauds there is in terms of ninjutsu. We interviewed a guy named Evan Pantazzi, who was one of the figureheads. He has his own organization where he believes he can knock people out with his mind. We interviewed Chris Thomas, who is the guy who's taking over George Dillman's organization because George Dillman's retired, so we got the new guy in charge. So we interviewed all of these people who are utterly crazy. But we got like this, we got it like we were just respectful. We weren't rude to them. We weren't aggressive with them. We weren't just trying to fight anybody. We're just documenting. We want to see what they'll say. We want to give them the fair shake because we could be wrong. But as we start doing the documentary, we find out we're not. But, we gave them all the fair shake to say what they wanted to say, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I've been wanting to do these seminars myself. When I've seen them, like, God, I wish that was closer to me. I'd have gone to that one because I agree completely. I'm looking at it and just thinking, obviously from my own experience, I'm lucky in that I travel and I'm around the best in the world on a regular basis. On top of my own training and competing. So I like to think I have an eye for, what is good across martial arts. And when I see these things that you described there taking place, I'm just like, wow, I'd like to have been there myself. What you've just described would have been my perfect day spent being a part of that. But, kudos to you. So is the documentary finished then, or are you still in the middle of filming it?
So I have to leave here and go back home because I've been out here for 3 months. I mean, I've been out here away from my day to day, and I did a lot of sacrifice in order to make this happen. So hopefully that comes across. Like, hopefully people see that there was hard work put into this. But I've been home in 3 months, so I'm getting ready to get back home. So I'll be going back home in 2 weeks, and so we're wrapping up. We just got a few more things to do. We have one more experiment we're doing this Saturday. In which my goal is to purposely fool people. So I've made up a name, I've made up a martial art, I've made up techniques. Basically, I just took a whole bunch of techniques that I saw in movies, and I was just like, well, anybody could do that. And so I just took those techniques that I saw in movies, and I'm going to be teaching a seminar just based off of what I saw in movies to see if people will just go for it, Like, because in order to, like, know pressure points and stuff, you kind of had to do martial arts a little bit to understand, like, what that is. But anybody could watch a movie. You don't have to be a martial arts expert. Anyone could watch a movie, watch the techniques, practice them, make it up, and then go teach. Anyone can do this. I mean, it's quite literally how James Heydrich started his martial arts career. And at one point, I think he said he had over, like, 4,000 students. He just watched Bruce Lee movies and just practiced. And then eventually, of course, after The Lie, then he starts actually training with people and learning martial arts. But at the time, like, he was just watching movies and pretending, And so I think that kind of thing is fascinating. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go pretend I'm someone else, teach bullshit for an hour. And then we're going to get testimonials from everybody who's there, who's not there. None of them are in on it. They have no clue that I'm trying to fool them. And then after the hour, do testimonials and say, hey guys, how do you like the seminar so far? Then after that hour and after the testimonials, let them know who I am, let them know what I do, and let them know all the reasons that what I taught them doesn't work. Show them all the red flags that we left them, because we left a ton of red flags. Show them everything that they should have been paying attention to say, no, I should not be doing this. And then teach them a real seminar for an hour and get their testimonials after. So that'll be a fun experiment. And we already did it once, and that went over well. We just didn't have enough people at the time to, like, do it because we're a really small area here. Like, I'm in Fresno. It's like a farming community. So we have to, like, go outside of Fresno to try to get this done. And it's a lot. The farther away you get from your nucleus, the harder it is to control. So we're trying real hard to stay close. But now we have our seminar set up, ready to go. So, but it should be done within 2 weeks, filming. We're already in the editing process right now. And if anybody's ever done editing, you understand that it's a long process. It is like one of the interviews we did, which was with a guy who was in a martial arts cult and wrote a book about it. When we did an interview with him, that interview was 13 hours long. You have to condense this down to a 2-hour movie, and that's just his interview, And so getting all of this, and then we interviewed 3 other people that were in the same cult. We interviewed another person who was in what I call the George Dillman cult. But he was in there as a kid, and his dad was an instructor, so he's got all this great footage of him growing up in the cult. So we're putting all this together, and still have to put in the experts, and still talk to the doctors, and talk to the psychologist, and an acupuncturist. Like, so we just got a few more things to film, though. I think we only have 3 more things to film, and then editing will probably take a few more months.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I've done my own fair share of editing, so I understand your pain there. It sounds like you've got a monster of a editing process to go through. So, when it's finished, then what's the plan then? Where's it being released? What have you got? Have you got a plan with that so far?
Distribution. So after we get um after we get our trailer edited and cut together, because that's we got 3 guys working on it all the time right now anyway. So Alex, who's our director, he runs the facility here called Vodo Studios. So he right now is helping me edit. So me and him are going through the footage and time stamping and making notes about how we want things to go. So that's been going on now for about 3 weeks. Then we have JP. JP is our head of cinematography, and so what he's doing is he's going through and making sure that the shots line up the way that he wants the shots to line up. And then we have our other guy, Antonio, who is now working on putting our trailer together. And I feel bad for Antonio because he's working on putting this trailer together basically by taking all these things, chopping them down to the juice, and getting all these juicy bits, right? But we're not even done filming yet. So he's like, as he starts putting things together, I have to like pump the brakes on him because he can't put it together all the way until we have all the footage done. And so it's a process. So all of us are working real hard to make it something good. So the next step will be once the trailer is done, we put together like a package. Then we go to present that and start putting it out there for distribution. And then we hope that it gets picked up by a streaming service. So we're looking for like a Netflix and Amazon Prime, something like that. One, because we already know the industry right now is hemorrhaging wanting content. Because of COVID, there's not a lot of things that were being shot. Regulations weren't allowing things to happen. Well, we were working around it as much as we could because we were doing this on some other people's money because we crowdfunded this. And so we needed to make this movie whether there was shit in the way or not. It's other people are waiting for this to happen. So, but yeah, man, I'm really excited to pitch. Then I can say this. I'll stand on this. I've never gone to a job interview where I didn't get the job. So I don't think I'm pretty sure I'm gonna just keep my fingers crossed that I can keep my perfect record there. And when I go to pitch this damn thing, that we pitch it and we get it picked up.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly I can't see that you having an issue with that. It sounds like a perfect Netflix fit, to be honest. Given everything that you said, the background that you've got, and and even how the community would respond to it. I think it's going to do really well. You've got me excited to see it now. I'm really I was looking forward to it anyway, but now you've told me a bit more. I'm even more looking forward. So is there anything then for anyone listening or watching? Is there anything they can do to help move this forward, or is that period ended now with the crowdfunding that you did?
Well, I mean, obviously, no matter what, you're still spending money all the time. Hell, just for me to get out here, I have an ear thing, so flying is like excruciatingly painful, and it would have in the budget, it would have been more expensive for me to fly and rent a car while I was here, because I still had to have a car because I was out here for 3 months. So I had to drive. Well, when you drive, I still had to pay for hotels, and I still had to eat, and I still had to pay for these guys' gas. Still had to pay for these guys' hotels. Still had to pay them for the work that they're doing, which may continue to extend. So there's always money being tossed out there. And pretty much what I did was I got the money from the crowdfunding and I just looked at these guys and I went, here you go. And then I opened my wallet and then I just kept going, here you go. Here you go. Here you go. So there's always room to help. Trust me. But if anybody actually wants to help out, our initial crowdfunding is over. So we're going to be working on probably next week on putting together like what needs to be done for paying out everybody for the crowdfunding that we did originally. So there was perks and prizes. So we're going to make sure that we get all that out to everybody who pitched in. And then after that, it's just like paying residuals. So people can go to McDojoLife DOC on Instagram. That's McDojoLife Doc. And then clear as day at the very top, it tells you exactly what you can do to actually help. It's a donation-based page. And what it happens is we wanted to make sure people got something for their money. So one of the things that you get is when you donate, you get access to this page. Another thing that you get is you get credit. So like everybody who paid in, everybody on those pages, they're getting a credit in the film because it's a community film. They helped make this because they cared enough to take an extra step to help us help other people. So everybody gets a damn credit. I don't care if that thing is like the majority of credits, you know. And so it's important that we just make sure that we give back to the community. So if anybody wants to keep up with it, you can go to McDojoLife DOC and just donate whatever. It does not matter how much it is. I do not care. I could care less. Whether it's somebody donated 50 cents one time, and I'm sure they were just kind of being an asshole, but I still let them in anyway. You know, other people will have donated more, but you know, people donate $5, $10. All that helps, man. Like feeding a crew of 6 people every day is expensive. Giving them gas money every day, especially in California where it's like $4 a gallon and they got SUVs that were traveling with equipment and it's expensive. So any little bit helps for sure.
Oh no, well I'm sure everyone listening or watching is going to head over and check that out, and I'll be putting all the details on my social media as well. Going back to what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, and what are the worst incidents or breaking of the rules that you've ever seen? What videos stand out for you then as being like, wow, they've hit an all new low, you know, with regards to you know, being a McDojo in that sense?
I mean, it gets kind of dark. Most of the stuff that I see, I can't share. I had a guy who runs another page, Grapple Roch or something like that. But he basically does what I do in Indonesia because in Indonesia there's a huge problem of this. And then what's happening is because there's so many different versions of Indonesian Salat, they believe in something called Tenaga Dalam. And there's a movement going on in Indonesian martial arts community, and it's what they're trying to fight against what they call public duping. They want that to stop because they've seen people get killed and hurt. One of those dudes sent me a video of a woman being raped by 6 martial arts students. It was an entire rape. They filmed it, and then I had to, you know, I wasn't expecting that, and that still is ingrained in my mind. They were doing the worst shit that you can possibly imagine. They were putting kitchen utensils inside this woman while she was passed out. It was horrific shit to see, and it's unfortunately the stuff. Fortunately, the stuff that you guys don't see. Unfortunately, the stuff that I do see. I saw kids getting run over by trucks because they believed in this Tenaga Dalam magical power would save their life, and those kids died. Thousands of people watching because they truly believed in this mystical power. I've seen a kid slit his throat because he thought that he had the iron body technique, and when he went to go use a knife, he didn't understand that the adults weren't using real knives. Slit his throat, spilled out. The kid was only 8 years old. I've seen some horrific shit in the name of martial arts. And so, yeah, the page, I try to make sure that I keep things funny and lighthearted, but the shit that I see is fucking disgusting. And it ingrains in my head, and I have to watch this shit over and over and over again. And the only reason I watch it over and over again is because it keeps getting sent to me. And people are reaching out, begging for help. Help our community. You have this ability. You have all these followers. You should be able to do something about it. And sometimes I just can't. And it's fucking heartbreaking. But at the end of the day, all I can do is the best I can do. And so, you know, with one of the kids that raped that woman, you know, I reached out to their martial arts studio. And the martial arts studio was like shocked. They were like, there's no way this kid could do that. And I was like, I've showed you the fucking film. Like, and they wouldn't even have they had the audacity not even to kick him out of the school. You know, it's like this kind of stuff is perpetuated, and it's very difficult because I'm the only one who runs McDojoLife. I do not have a team of people behind me. It's just me. And so it's really nice to see that other people in the community back the project because it's the only reason I keep doing it. You know, if I had to continue to see some of the sick shit that I got to see, I wouldn't fucking do it if I didn't have some kind of backing from people. Because then I would just basically be torturing myself for nothing. But I do believe that we make a difference. And I know for a fact that the page helps people because I get messages often from people who say it does. But yeah, those are some of the more horrific things that I've seen.
I mean, that sounds really bad, you know, and you know, I've got to admit, I don't know if I could cope with watching those sort of videos. I'm definitely wouldn't be for me that, but you know, I understand it's you know, it's how when you start going down those roads, they go, like you said, they go very dark and they go very deep, and where does it stop? But obviously the people then that are involved in these videos, what is their response to you? I'm guessing that they're not sending you, polite messages if you're trying to expose them, to the greater to help the community. I'm guessing they've been
You
in
know,
touch with you.
oh yeah, I get death threats all the time, man. That's why I don't talk about my personal life very much, because I do get death threats, and it kind of comes with the job. And I'm not gonna lie, like it's kind of the more enjoyable, non-enjoyable part of the job. And I know people are like that. How is that enjoyable? Because to me, at this point, some of them are just funny. Like I've had one of my first, like my first real, like serious death threat was actually in London. Like it was so I got hired for a nunchuck seminar. And so they brought me out, and I was like, well, if I'm going to be in London, fuck, I'm going to be out there for a little while. I'm going to enjoy myself, right? I'm not just going to go and come back. It's a flight. It's not like a 2 hour, it's a flight to get there. So I was like, you know what, I'll stay. And so the Taekwondo studio that I was working with, they end up they end up having a Taekwondo tournament that they were a part of. And it was like in some YMCA thing there. It's really nice, actually. So I wind up going, and I'm sitting down in the bleachers, and I'm doing my stuff, man. I'm pretty much on this thing like 24 hours a day. And then I get a little message that pops up. And so I go, okay, I got a DM, which is like a drop in the bucket, but I happen to be on my phone when it came up. So I just go ahead and answer it, right? And the profile had no profile picture, no posts, no followers, and they were following no one. So it was a fresh troll account, basically. And then when I answered it, the only thing that it said was what I was wearing. Which was a little uneasy because I'm in a room full of thousands of people. Like it was a lot of people at this fucking tournament. And so I was like, this could be absolutely anybody. So, and it's happened before, which is really weird, where somebody might recognize me and take a little bit of a photo and then post it, but not come talk to me. And that's like weird. Like I had a dude at a urinal one time, like I'm at a club and I'm peeing and I felt like eyes on me and I looked. And he goes, hey, you run that page? And I was like, yeah, yes, I do. And my dick's in my hand. And he's like, let's take a selfie. I was like, maybe not right now. And he was like, oh, no big deal. And we wound up taking a selfie in the bathroom because like this dude was like excited. And that's cool. I don't think I'm that important, but apparently he was a fan. So we did that. But anyway, it's happened before. So I didn't think anything of it. I thought it was weird. It made me a little uneasy, but I just wrote him back. I was like, hey man, if you just want to come over and talk, right, we'll talk. We can hang out, right? I got nothing else to do, you know? And so they then wrote me a message, which kind of let me know what the issue was. So when I first started McDojoLife, like a year in, there was a guy who was a pedophile who was running a martial arts studio, and then somebody brought it to my attention, and then I called them out. Well, when I did that, their reviews went from like 5 stars to 1, like the whole community jumped all over it, and that guy wound up closing his school, and he disappears. Never heard about it again. All I knew was the school closed. Years later, right? Somebody else sends me another message and says, yo, isn't this dude? And this was somebody who'd been following the page for a while. Apparently, this guy left the United States, went to the UK, and then he winds up opening another martial arts studio out there under a different name. And I was like, that is the dude. So I do my research and find out, yes, it is the exact same person. So I call out that school, and then that school gets closed down, right? And so this guy apparently was one of his students in the UK and thought I was lying about it, and he was mad at me. And so he starts writing all of this on the DM about like how I was wrong and that guy was a great man. I was like, dude, I have proof. Like, it's not like I could just make this up without getting sued. Like, I have to have proof of all these things or I'd be in legal trouble. And so he didn't care. Like, and then he told me, which was weird, and I don't think it might have been as possible, but he did tell me that when I left the tournament, he was going to shoot me. And so we're in London. The odds of him actually having a gun are probably low, but I was like, I'm pretty sure I could have gotten a gun in here, like to be honest. And I was like, it made me uneasy. And so I was like, fuck, all right. And he's anywhere in this crowd, he or she. I'm assuming it was a he based off the way that the typing was going, right? Could have been anywhere and could have reached out and touched me at any time, and I would have never known what would have happened. So the first thing I do is I walk down to the 2 off-duty police officers that are there to help with the tournament. And I walk down and I let them know what happened, and they go, well, there's nothing we can do about it. And I was like, well, I mean, could you help me somehow? And they were like, yeah, well, what we can do, obviously, is, stay within eye shot of us, which was like that area, which was fine. I could do that. I was going to do that anyway. And they were like, whenever we leave, We said that we would help break down the mats, and then after we help break down the mats, we'll walk you outside to your car. And I was like, okay, that's fair. And we did, and nothing ever came from it. But that was the most uneasy I had ever really been with a death threat because, one, they knew I was there and I had no clue who they were. Two, the threat was a serious threat. It didn't seem like, it didn't come off like a campy threat. It seemed like that person was seriously going to try to hurt me. But I will say this, sometimes I get really fun threats because I think they're hilarious. And I actually got one I'll play for you. Hold on. It was while I was doing something for the McDojoLife documentary. Indonesia really hates me. Not Indonesia itself, but a lot of these like fraudulent schools in Indonesia that abuse people, I post often, right? Because Indonesians who don't believe in Tenaga Dalam and don't believe in abusing people hate it. And so they ask me to post this kind of stuff. And then these people will be like, well, in Indonesia, that's the culture. No, it's not. It's not. I know for a fact it's not. None of these people believe that you should just abuse students like that. So I want to play one for you. Hold on. Where is it? It's pretty funny. Here we go. So I'll play you one of my death threats.
With McDojo, we are going to Monterey right now. Got some Taco Bell for breakfast, and he's about to tell me the death threat of the day.
The death threat of the day. Here you go. This is why I love my job. So the guy contacted me. He said, your face is like pig poop. And I said, thank you. He said, you don't know the culture in Indonesia. Act like an adult. Thumbs up. I said, calling people names is acting like an adult? Laughy face. He said, our culture is equally accepting. You don't need to talk much if you don't know the truth. Here, the culture kills people without touching them. He said, remember carefully. I said, please prove that. I said, I'm still currently alive, so use your powers to kill me right now. He said, you are crazy, you idiot. I said, I'm still alive. He said, bastard. I said, still alive.
Here with...
So, yeah. I get fun ones like that where people think they can kill me without touching me, but then I get serious ones, so it's a little joy in the day, I guess.
Yeah, you got to look on the bright side. You got to take the silver line, and I'm guessing you've again, when you're dealing with these sort of people, that's going to be an after effect of, like I said, dealing with those sort of people. So now that you've finished the documentary and you looking to edit and get it out, what else does the future entail? Is this the first of many documentaries? Where do you see McDojoLife going, or yourself personally with it?
Well, as of right now, like I think that the page has been more successful now in the last year than it ever has. I think it's kind of a snowball effect. Your first little bit is all climbing uphill, but once you get up the hill, man, like you've made it. And then people either support you or they don't after that, and it just kind of snowballs on its own. So we're kind of in that snowball stage. The hard part about the snowball stage is with the internet, you never know when that will happen. You never know when it's just going to spill over and just become a thing. And I was going to do this whether I had one follower or a million. It doesn't matter. I was going to do this. I didn't start, like what people think is like they always look at you at the top or at wherever you are with your success, and they forget that you didn't start there. Like I was a dude who was just teaching martial arts classes. And then I got fortunate that somebody recognized what I was doing and started to push it, and really believed in it. And yeah, there are the Joe Rogans, but there's The Rock. There's people that I thought I'd never get to know that I feel like are friends, like John Hackelman. Like I loved watching Chuck Liddell when I was growing up. That was like, to be homies with his coach, that would have never been something that I ever thought was ever going to happen. But he's a cool dude, man. We get along. Or like Mike Beltran, who's been nothing but supportive, or John Wayne Parr, or Dave LeDuc, or all these people. Man, Robin Black. There's so many, Kenny Florin. All these people are so supportive of what I do. I feel obligated to do it better tomorrow. Every day I wake up, it's got to be better than I did the day before, because I have people who are looking at me as like an authority figure for this now. And that's not what the intent was to be, but now I don't have a choice. It's not up to me. I could just walk away, but then I'd be walking away from the things that I really care about. I care about the community, and that's why I do this, because I love it. So now we're in the snowball phase that I never would have thought would have happened. And so a couple things coming up is, one, with the documentary, we're going to pitch it as a movie, but we have enough content to make a series. And so if we pitch it right, it might be a docu-series. It might not just be a documentary. So that'll be interesting, and we'll see where that goes. So, and that might open doors to other things. So that's one avenue. The other thing is I'm working with a company called Epic Roll, who's taking care of all of our apparel now. And so with Epic Roll, we're working on trying to get our brand out there and make it something that you can actually purchase in stores, not just online, and not just something that's just to this community. So we started another apparel brand called Violent Pacifist. And so we've got a whole bunch of t-shirt lines and stuff like that. So we're going to be working on that within the next couple months. I'm writing a book about my time fighting in bars when I was 15. So I'm writing a book about that. Then I have headquarters when I get back to Jacksonville. The goal is to open up a venue that's a headquarters for McDojoLife. And so the goal is every month to bring in somebody new for a seminar, make content with that person, and make instructionals with them and put that out into the airwaves. So we'll be able to do that, host tournaments, host fights. And the goal is to make it like an epicenter for all martial arts, not just MMA or BJJ, but allow people to not have to worry about the politics if they want to go to a seminar. And so that's where people fall now, right? Which is the whole Creonche thing. If somebody goes and, hey, I'm going to take the seminar with so-and-so, but they can't because it's like a rival school, then they're still missing out on a great education. So I want to give them an opportunity to have a place to say, you know what, fuck that. If you want to go train with so-and-so, you can do so without having to worry about politics. There is no politics in this building. You come, you train. If that's what you want to do, you will have a safe place here. And that's what I want. And hopefully that'll help the community understand how fucking ridiculous that political garbage is that they do. You know, so that's another thing we're working on. I'm working on a website, which we've been working on forever, but I'm so fucking picky. I should stop being so picky. It's just, you know, I care about the brand and I want to make sure that it does well. So, but I'm working on a website that will keep track of everyone's lineages. So that way, right now, the hard part is knowing if someone's legit or not. Well, I came up with an idea that I know will actually keep track of people's lineages from here on out forever. And then instead of having to look and research to if so-and-so is honest and true, you can just go to the website. You can see who they're under. If that person has approved them and said they're under so-and-so, it'll be all taken care of. And so it'll take care of everyone's lineages for every martial art ever.
So for anyone listening then, from let's say they're a coach, what would you want every coach to start doing after listening to this podcast with regards to, you know, making the community a better place and putting into effect, you know, what it is you're doing?
Well, I'm going to say something that's probably going to sound counterproductive, but it's what I've come up with over the last decade of doing McDojoLife and 24 years in the martial arts industry. The stigma is if someone's successful and they're making money in the martial arts industry, they're a McDojo. Every martial arts studio loves to do this thing where they'll point at the guy who's successful across the street and say, well, the only reason he's successful is because. And that's trying to make it a bad thing to be successful in the industry. What people don't understand is this is a toxic thought that seeped into every martial arts studio across the world, where the instructor is not doing so well. His studio is not doing so well. So he points at the guy across the street and blames him. Well, that guy over there is just giving out black belts. Oh, they're charging all this money and they're a ripoff. We're the real deal. My 10 students can beat his 200. Give one of my students beats all of his students. Well, that's an asinine thought. What that is that's ego, and your feelings are hurt because you're not doing well. So you're trying to find an excuse to your reasoning for not doing well. What the community should be doing is, one, making money is not a bad thing. Making money is a good thing. That means you could pay your employees. That means you can give them health insurance. That means you can give them a 401k or a retirement plan. That means they're happy to be there. Stop making your students do classes for free. Stop. Cut that shit out. Stop making your new guy, like, cut his teeth for free lessons. Pay him. It's a job. And if you can't, you should be asking yourself why I can't afford to do that. You're doing something wrong if you cannot pay your employees. That means there's a hole. And because we have this like thing where it's like, well, I have so-and-so and he's about to be instructor, so I'll trade him. He'll get free classes. What that means is he's not obligated to you. People are less likely to show up for something they're getting for free. And two, if he can't pay his light bill by kicking it. That doesn't help him. You know, he can't pay his mortgage. He will not be happy and eventually will get burned out. People wonder in the industry, well, why did so and so leave? I don't understand why he would leave and then open up his own school. Be like, bitch, you didn't pay him. You didn't pay him. Why did you think he would leave? Oh, loyalty. Yeah, loyalty only goes if it's in your direction, though, right? If he's loyal to me, but I don't have to be loyal back. And so that's the problem. And so let's cut that stigma of calling everybody a McDojo just because they're making money or doing something you don't do. Somebody's doing Taekwondo and you're doing Jiu-Jitsu. Fine, they do Taekwondo. What the fuck's wrong with that? Who cares? People are like, well, I'd beat his ass. That's not the only reason of joining martial arts. It's not. It's not. People try to make their reason their student's reason. And that's not the case. Not everybody who joins martial arts wants to be a fighter. Not everybody who joins martial arts wants to whoop everybody's ass. Nor can everybody do that because that's an impossible fantasy, right? We had a guy who had cerebral palsy. And his only goal would be to walk up and accept his blue belt. He wanted to walk there. He had canes on his arms, right? And so he would go out to the mat. He would come onto the mat and fall every time we would bow in. He fell every day. And one day I got tired of seeing him fall. I walked up and I go, hey man, you know you don't have to like fall. You can just start on your knees. He goes, no. Because my goal is whenever it's time for me to get my blue belt, I am going to stand and I'm going to walk over there and I'm going to hold my blue belt and I'm going to walk back. That's all he wanted. Would that guy ever beat anyone's ass? Probably not. Not an able-bodied man, but that wasn't his goal. And so one day when he did get his blue belt, I'll be damned if he did not walk as shaky-legged as he did. He walked up, grabbed his blue belt, bowed, and walked back and collapsed. And I fucking cried, dude. I couldn't hold my shit in. That was the most touching shit I had ever seen in my entire career. It wasn't so-and-so beating up so-and-so. It wasn't who could get the most best arm bar. It was a guy who just wanted to walk. And so as instructors, our obligation is not to our ego. It's not me, I, what I would do. It's what do you want? Oh, you want a community with friends? Cool. Well, I'll make sure I provide you with a safe, healthy community where you can be yourself and people will be there for you. You know, maybe someone wants a mentor. Most people do. They want somebody to look up to and to talk to and to grow with. Provide a good mentor, you know. Maybe somebody just wants to learn how to hit a bag because they need to lose 40 pounds. Okay, provide them that atmosphere. But don't sit there and think that everybody in your school has to be some type of trained killer because that's a fantasy. That's us, like people do with their kids, projecting. Like, you know, and that's not safe and that's not healthy, you know. And so I really hope that the industry starts to learn, one, that making money is not a bad thing. You need to make money, to have good equipment, to have a clean facility, to have happy staff. You need that. And so it's not a bad thing. Just be honest with your students. And if you spent, let's say, 2 decades, maybe more, under an instructor, and you're proud to say you have a black belt under that instructor, when you go to open up a martial arts studio, get yourself a mentor for your business. Get yourself somebody who will teach you. That'd be the equivalent of the Street Fighter. We all had this, by the way. I know you probably have. Where the guy walks in off the street and he goes, I want to fight. You go, okay, well, have you had any fights before? No, I fight in the streets. I'm undefeated in the streets. No one takes that guy seriously. No one. We all laugh. All right, well, sign the waiver. Get in the ring. He gets his ass beat. He leaves. He never comes back. Right? That everybody has that guy. That's the equivalent of opening up in a martial arts school without learning any business whatsoever. You're that guy at that moment. I do business in the streets. I'm undefeated. That's what it sounds like to me. Go get a mentor. Go get somebody who's going to allow you to grow your business so you can help more people. Because the more people who join good martial arts studios, less people join shitty ones. So make sure that your business is up and up so that way you can sell people. You can get them in your programs. You can get them to get a good education. But if you're not answering your phones because you don't have somebody at the front, if you're not returning phone calls, if you don't have a system that's easy and understandable for anyone to learn, like a process to get someone signed up, you're fucking up. One last little note to that too. Here's how you know if you know what the fuck you're doing or not. This will be your baseline, all right? 1, do you have something that you say to everybody that walks through your door to get them signed up? If you don't, you're fucking up. If you're winging it every time, then you have no real system. Number 2, when you did your grand opening, did you just do a grand opening and hope people would show up? Or did you already have every last one of those classes filled with trial members? Because if you didn't have them filled already, you fucked up. If you just open the doors and you have no students yet, you fucked up. Like all of these things are something that people should be looking at and internalizing and not blaming the guy across the street. Look at yourself, like we do as martial artists, and say, if I got hit in the face, how do I fix it? Not, it's that guy's fault I got hit in the face. Business is the same way. It's your own fault if you're failing. Figure it out. So those are some things I think we could do to improve.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think we think very alike on a on a lot of these subject matters. Well, Rob, I don't want to take up any more time. It's been fantastic talking to you, and I've really enjoyed our talk. And for anyone listening or watching, I'm going to be putting up all the details of McDojoLife's documentary and everything that Rob's mentioned today, his website. Honest, Rob, that was an amazing podcast. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for sparing the time, and yeah, good luck with all the documentary and all the projects going forward.
Yeah, man, anytime. And like one thing just for people to know is like when I started the page, I said I would do absolutely anyone's show. Anyone's show. So if anyone asks, I'll just do your show. I'm not that hard to reach. I will make the time because I don't feel I'm that important. So, if you want me back on, we'll do it again. And then the other thing is I answer every direct message. So if anybody sends me a message, it might take me a while, but I will get to it. So I'm easily reachable. I go live often. So if anybody has any questions about any of the things that I said, you can stay out of the comment section. No need. Just talk to me. Hit me up. I will go live with absolutely anyone and we will discuss anything that you feel I am wrong about. I have no problems with it. So just letting everybody know.
Oh, that sounds cool. I'll definitely be hitting you up for future talks and or getting involved with everything that you do. So like I said, thanks again. Thanks guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.
See you later, brother.